back. WN sitting around and couch potatoing and watching football and learning about football. This guy's one of my favorite guys to follow. Out at Bleacher Report, he is one of the lead writers there. You can follow along at Mike Tanier. That's Tanier out on Twitter. There are all sorts of weird Baltimore references on his Twitter, but nothing more weird than the fact that he once taught Joe Flacco math. We welcome Mike Tanier back on from Bleacher Report. What's going on, man? How are things up in Audubon and Haddonfield right now? Certainly a little bit of an earthquake around 11:40 on Friday night for Joe Flacco, right?
A little bit there. I don't know. I haven't gauged the local interest in this. You know, a lot of us, while people around here root for Joe Flacco because this is his hometown, et cetera, et cetera. We do kind of get that, you know, he's in his 30s now. He has a Super Bowl ring. He's richer than all of us, and we want what's best for him, but I don't think that there's a seismic fear that if he loses his job, it's going to lower the self-esteem of this area or besmirch what he's accomplished during his career. So there was more of a seismic shift around here because it's Philadelphia country, and, you know, we landed tight end Dallas Goedert, and we kind of stuck it to the Cowboys, and David Akers went crazy and things like that. So there's a lot going on. I can't believe you said couch potatoing for the draft, though. I was chained to this desk doing grades all week, and I couch potatoed nothing. I was handcuffed here. It was like 50 Shades of Draft. That's how crazy it was around here. So I'm glad you got a little rest this weekend, Nestor.
Oh, come on now. Come on now. I was watching arena football. I went to the Cavs game on Sunday. I've watched the Orioles stink, stank, and stunk over and over and over again. But the draft, the one thing about the draft for guys like you and me, you can't eat wings, right? You can't do hand food. You know, and especially when your general manager at any point will deal up, back, forward, draft quarterbacks. You know, I mean, Ozzie was the story of the draft, I sort of kind of think, because no one has ever, I think, gotten this kind of a haul by dealing back before. And, you know, Ozzie's had some pretty good drafts, and I know it's easy to pat a guy on the back the day after the draft, but for what they went in with and what they came out with from a player standpoint and a quality standpoint, I think that they've done a really nice job here in the offseason. I mean, I'm giving them high marks over the last 16 weeks to try to improve the situation here.
You're right. First of all, you mentioned hand foods during the draft. My wife came in with slices of pizza, and I looked at her like she was crazy.
I need a fork, honey. I need something with a fork.
You need broth. I'm drinking broth and stuff like that because I have to have 100% free hands and I have to have liquid lunches and all. But, yeah, you know what? One thing I came away with is, first of all, Ozzie didn't come in with a bunch of extra picks. He came in, usually he's got all these supplemental picks. He didn't have that this year. And yet, by the end, you look at this, and there's 2 first-rounders, there's two third-rounders. I think there's 11 fourth-rounders. I kind of lost track in there along the way. He wheeled and dealed to do what he likes to do, which is work those middle rounds, which is where he likes to find value. That I like. And you talk about the overall offseason. The overall offseason this offseason really was about the offense. And I can't remember that happening with the Baltimore Ravens. You know, I tweeted something right before the draft that, you know, their last, I forget what it was, 20 for day 1 picks, day 2 picks or something like that. It was like 11 defensive front 7 guys and 5 guys in the secondary. It's just very rare for them to approach this. And, you know, there are guys they grab that I don't like. There are guys I grab that I like a lot. But I like the fact that now when you look over the entire depth chart, particularly at the receiving and tight end positions, you see a whole different set of guys, and you see a competition that's going to result in getting the best 2, 3, 4 wide receivers, getting the best 2 tight ends out there on the field in the short term.
Mike Tanier can be followed out at Bleacher Report and the BR app, and of course at Mike Tanier out on Twitter, where he was incredibly busy over the weekend. And I know, you know, the big picture for you is the other 31 teams, but from the Ravens' perspective and what they did with Flacco, this is not unprecedented. Obviously, the Alex Smith situation last year, Joe Flacco stood in front of all of us 3 weeks ago and said, "I know they're going to draft a quarterback," but I think it is different when it's a first-round guy. But in Lamar Jackson, here's a kid that every team in the league passed on, right? So that's either the greatest motivator or it is what it is, which is no one else really believed in him enough. There were 4 other guys that went ahead of him. So there are warts on him in a lot of ways, I would think, coming in and trying to run this kind of an offense. But for what it means to the organization when you do that, and the shakeup that creates when you have a $19 million cap hit that you would have next year if you were to jettison Flacco, it really does sort of light a fire, and that's something I think that fans wanted some excitement around here. The stadium had emptied out. I think that there's a part of the offense that felt stale, and I've never seen Marty Mornhinweg quite as energetic as he was on Friday afternoon, given the attaboys.
Yeah, and there's a lot to unpack there. And one of it is, when you see a Lamar Jackson slip down like that, there's a couple of things that happens. But one of them is that there are the organizations that need the quarterback to win now, or to go out there and get the guy now. Your Browns at the top and your Jets at the top. They got to be a little bit risk-averse, and so they make these risk-averse selections. Then comes the quarterback of the future tier. And when Lamar Jackson started to slip a little bit, he was slipping into that, who needs a quarterback a year or two from now? And you had a long list of teams that you can name that. It could have been the Chargers, it could have been the Saints, whatever. It turns out to be the Ravens. But what you say there is correct. When you draft a guy in the first round, when you move up in the first round, that kind of sends a message that you are kind of alert to this guy, to a need there. When he's so different a type of quarterback, I think that sends a message as well. You didn't go out there and get another tall pocket passer. You could have gone out there and got Mason Rudolph and said, okay, we're going to have somebody else who's just like Joe Flacco, so he can back up Joe Flacco and we can plug him into the offense. I think what you're saying here is we want to do something different. We want to add that mobility as a possible weapon at times. You want things to be maybe a quicker reaction time, even on the pulling the trigger in the pocket. That's something that you're looking for there. And when you see that, you can kind of see and feel the organization wanting to start going in another direction there. I know Joe Flacco has to feel it. I know he's got to recognize his cap hit. I know he's got to look at the results over the last couple of years. Maybe it lights a fire under him. I'm sure it does. I'm sure every quarterback is motivated all the time as much as they possibly can be. Even Jay Cutler is that motivated all the time. But it might simply be a reality of some quarterbacks get into the 30s and they start to decline, especially guys who are bigger, who might have been a little slower, didn't have a lot of quickness to lose if they lose a little bit. Joe Flacco might be that guy. And that rearview mirror, the object in it is as big as it looks to Joe Flacco right now.
Well, and certainly in the case of managing this year, Flacco will be the good soldier and all that stuff, but it is two different kind of offenses. I mean, from a tactical, practical standpoint, they got to go beat the Bills week 1, right? How much time can you put into Lamar Jackson when he's going to be carrying a clipboard? I mean, that's just a fact. And anybody that doesn't understand that, and he's also kind of a kid that doesn't want to split out at wide receiver and run around and do other things other than being a quarterback. And you know as well as I do, 94% of those snaps are going to Joe Flacco from day one because Joe Flacco gives them a chance to win a Super Bowl. That's what they're trying to do there. So for now, it's a lot of this and that. But once the season starts, Flacco's a $25 million quarterback for a reason, right?
Right. And one thing is, you're going to see a lot of Lamar Jackson sizzle reels, and you're going to drool all over yourself. And there are stretches in Lamar Jackson's tape where he looks horrendous. And they're out there, and they're one of the reasons he slipped down there. And there's stretches at a time. They are like slumps. And when you watch them, you can see why. If you're doing any kind of even rudimentary quarterback scouting, you can see his body turned in the wrong direction, his feet in the wrong place. Lamar Jackson, like a lot of college quarterbacks, was not coached to be a great pro quarterback. He was not coached to be a precision, split-second timing pocket quarterback. He was coached to win games for the Louisville Cardinals, which means sometimes it's we don't care about the fundamentals, just go out there and crush them, Lamar. And that's got to get coached into him. And that's something Mornhinweg and Roman and some of these other guys are going to have to do. And that's not a matter of days to weeks, weeks to months. That's probably once to a season to get him more comfortable back there. That doesn't mean he can't go out there and start a game or two and run around and get a win, but get that more fundamentally sound guy who is going to deliver accurate passes in the pocket is going to take time. And until then, it's going to be Joe Flacco. And you hit about one other thing there, Nestor. You talked about this package and split out. Lamar Jackson is reluctant to do that. That became a big bugaboo during the draft process. Joe Flacco also does not like wildcat-type stuff. He didn't like it years ago when Tyrod Taylor did some of it. He's not somebody who's going to say, oh, yeah, let's run the wildcat. I'm 100% thrilled with that. So if they try to play that angle, and Roman did that with Alex Smith and Kaepernick years ago, it will not go over well with either guy in the locker room. I don't think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see a grooming period, and it's going to be a matter of time to say, when does the backup overtake the starter? I don't think you're going to see that in August, and I don't think you're going to see that in September or October either.
He is Mike Tanier. He is at Bleacher Report and BR, the app. Make sure you're downloading that at Bleacher Report. You can find him at Mike Tanier. That's Tanier as well. Hayden Hurst, the forgotten guy here, right? I think we all knew that. We were joking around about it on Friday, but as Marty Morningwood said, he's a quarterback, right? And that's a fact. But Hayden Hurst will be a factor. He will get every opportunity to go catch himself 30, 40, 60, 80 balls this year based on what happens. And he is a little older. And, I know you love the grand old game, Tanier, as well. He's got that baseball background in him, and I assured him that the Orioles could use him if the Ravens couldn't.
I don't know. You got to go back and look at his stats in the baseball organizations there, and there's a reason he's playing football.
Well, he reached to his elbow and he showed me like his, the soft part. He said, "No, not for me." I did that.
you know what? I'm not the biggest Hayden Hurst fan. I can see where he fits in this offense. He's a move tight end. He's a guy you can put in motion and kind of put him in the backfield and do stuff like that. So he's going to get a role. And whoever is quarterbacking, he's going to be a safety valve. I know Flacco likes to have that short dump-off pass available to him, and he's got somebody there who's going to catch it and maybe do something with it. I like Mark Andrews better. I like the tight end they got from Oklahoma. I think you got a really big dude who's going to rumble with the ball. I think he has the potential to be a better blocker. So one thing you're going to see, and not since, you really had Todd Heap and those guys back there at tight end, you're going to have like a good factor guy at tight end between these two guys, and if Max Williams can ever get anything accomplished or whatever, where these guys get the ball, they're going to do something with it. I love Benjamin Watson. He's going to catch that short pass. There's going to be three guys on him because he can't really move laterally very well anymore. And that's going to be another wild card in this offense because you saw in the past, Flacco would deliver the short pass, and you weren't sure if anybody was going to do something with it. Not since a couple of years ago when you had more playmakers. Now you put those playmakers back in. I think you got one at wide receiver, too, in Jordan Lasley, who can catch those little short passes and move with them. You see that, and that's going to be a quarterback's best friend situation where it doesn't always have to be a bomb. It doesn't always have to be pinpoint. You drop the ball to your playmakers and let your playmakers make plays. I don't think we saw enough of that in Baltimore. Oh, I forgot Willie Snead can do that, too, if he's healthy. Yeah, we haven't seen that enough in Baltimore, and I think you're going to see more of it this year.
Well, I think I have to give the Ravens high marks over the last 14 to 16 weeks. I saw you at the Super Bowl. At the beginning of the Combine, Orlando Brown was a guy they would have been considering at 16. I'm running over to here with him and Ridley. Those were the names that were buzzing, 6, 8, 10 weeks ago. What they wound up getting in this draft in, a top tight end, a quarterback of the future or whatever that is going to be. Orlando Brown, you pointed out a tight end that was a second-round pick on a lot of boards, and they wind up with 4 picks in the first 2 days when it didn't feel like it was going to be that way, and then a whole litany of other players because of the deft moves of Ozzie. Then you factor in that they didn't go crazy with wide receivers because they didn't like any of them up top, which is why they ran out and got Crabtree. Sometimes these puzzles, you start to learn more about it after the draft, right? When they go in on a 132 and a 162 wide receiver, which is what they thought all along, which is why they filled their room with the Sneads and the Smokey Browns and Crabtree. That was the best they were going to do this offseason to help Joe Flacco.
Right. They weren't going to go out there and get that big, splashy guy in free agency because there were very few of them. It was going to cost an arm and a leg, so they went with the little guys. The guys at the top of the draft board at wide receiver, they all have question marks. So you go out and you get Lasley, who has a lot of question marks, but sometimes looks like Anquan Bolden on film. And you go out and you get your Jaleel Scott, who has a lot of question marks, but has that go up and get him thing. If you remember the old Ravens offense where it was always a play action bomb and a jump ball in the end zone and it was Torrey Smith catching it or something like that. Scott can be like that. And what I can see, I don't see an obvious number one. I don't think Crabtree is an obvious number one anymore. I'm not sure who the obvious number two is. What I see is a competition where when it's all said and done, there's going to be 4 or 5 wide receivers who can do a lot of things with that in the program. And then there are big guys and there are slot guys and things like that. And that's what's going to happen in this offseason. That's when you have an assured general manager, an assured head coach, and an assured organization that they're not busily trading out last year's guys or 2 years ago's guys or putting a new system in or putting a new culture in. They know what they're doing and how they want to do it, so they can kind of make decisions like that and be hand in glove and think long term. And that's what Ozzie and what his replacement coming in and Harbaugh do. Sometimes it's for better or worse. Sometimes it does get a little stagnant, but you see the idea that they can do that kind of thing with confidence and say, we'll have 4 guys compete for 2 jobs and have the best man win. A lot of organizations can't do that. Ravens have been able to do that for about a decade.
We are chatting with Mike Tanier from Bleach Report. You can follow him at Mike Tanier, as well as downloading the BR app and follow everything they're doing. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by the AFL Baltimore Brigade. They're playing on Friday night against Ron Jaworski's Philadelphia Soul. Jaws is going to join us this week to talk about Joe Flacco and about the draft, as well as Arena Football League action. I went down and watched Randy Hipper throw it around over the weekend. It was kind of fun. It was a Saturday afternoon. This is this Friday. They beat the Albany Empire over the weekend. Also, the Modell Lyric featuring the music of Jackson Brown on Thursday night. I will be there and monitoring Game 4 of the Stanley Cup, but I'm going to go see Jackson Brown at the Modell Lyric. If you haven't been to the Modell Lyric lately, please get downtown, check it out. William Shatner coming in a couple of weeks from now, a little Star Trek dealio. Learn more about it up there, as well as Steely Dan and Kansas this fall as well. Fremont Mortgage, don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need Freedmont's education online, buying, selling, or just thinking about it. Go to Freedmont.com to learn more. Also involved with our swabbings and all the good stuff. Mike Tanier here to talk not just about the Ravens, but about everything else. You know, I've talked about the business of hope for the Ravens and the empty seats and selling the fact that we're getting better. You know, most of the teams can do that. It's a lot more fun when you look down and see a dozen names of draft picks, right, as opposed to the year when you deal everybody away and you get like 5. It's a real skinny little board of that. But usually that means that you probably spent more money in free agency, or you probably had a better year. You're up in Philadelphia, where even there they draft this 6'7" freak. Dude, when that video came on, my wife had just gotten done taking a nap on Saturday. I stopped it, and I went and woke her up. I'm like, you got to see this guy. It looks like Andre the Giant running around, right? So, I mean, even the Eagles went off the board. There was something for everyone. Shaquem Griffin as well, and the Kyle Lauletta stories and all the stories of all the problems and the heartwarming tales. Every team wakes up feeling like we can win 11 games this year, right?
And that's a great feeling. Again, you mentioned Griffin and the Seahawks. I don't think the Seahawks had a phenomenal draft overall. This is a team that got rid of some of their heart and soul guys in an effort to rebuild, and then they come back in the draft, and you get Rashad Penny at the top of the draft. Like, you got a running back. You still don't have an offensive line, et cetera. Then you bring Griffin, and you bring the Griffin twin story into that, and it wakes everything up, and it kind of creates that situation of hope that, this team is still committed to doing things a certain way and bringing in some phenomenal players, and that's great for the Seahawks. And you mentioned the Eagles, and you mentioned Jordan Mailata, I believe his name is. The rugby guy. I think it's kind of a wacky pick, because I look at him and say, this guy should be playing defensive end or something like that. He's never blocked a human in his life. You do not block in rugby, and they're going to put him at offensive tackle to try out. But you're right, you see that. I think what the Eagles had that was the moment was David Akers up there. I guess it was Friday night, screaming like a crazy accountant who'd gone nuts at a karaoke bar or something like that at Cowboys fans. Then they get Dallas Goedert. Eagles have a need at tight end because they lost some guys to retirement and free agency behind Zach Ertz. They're getting a tight end when the Cowboys need a tight end, and the Cowboys are drafting next, and you get this kid. And it's just this moment. You're right. Eagles fans, there's still like a hangover from the Super Bowl here. There's a little bit of a worry. Oh, you didn't do enough. Oh, you didn't get the right guys. Oh, we should be trading Nick Foles or some crazy stuff like that. You get a tight end, and you do it in a way that kind of sticks it to the Cowboys, and it creates this like another moment of the Eagles fans. Like, Eagles fans still think we're the smartest guys in the room. We still have Peterson. We still have Roseman. We're still doing stuff like that. We did it to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. We did it to the Cowboys in the draft. And those are the kind of moments that make the draft so special for fans, like you said, all around the NFL.
Do you like that the thing's gotten big and wacky like this? I mean, I'm sort of getting used to the new format. I mean, I like the Felt Forum. I always like the Felt Forum, in New York and all that stuff. It's never going back into that, but, that we'll be talking about that like black and white and Pete Rozelle on a chalkboard, before too long, because they've now moved the thing like into stadiums and letting 50,000 people in there running around like this. And the TV ratings follow. Every part of it follows the money, and fans are clamoring in April. We've all got cabin fever, right? Like literally. Right.
And the draft's ratings obliterate baseball ratings and hockey playoff ratings and NBA playoff. Really good NBA basketball playoff games are getting obliterated by the NFL draft in the ratings department. And I don't like it. The curmudgeon-y, I have to cover this event. Part of me, dislikes it. The access is non-existent anymore. I don't go out to Dallas because there's no sense in going out there to cover it when you're only going to get 3 minutes with the guy, and it's going to be like a craziness around it. When I have to do all these pick-by-pick grades, and they're throwing out to Winslow, Arizona, and we're waiting for a parrot to come, and all of this crazy stuff.
Dude, it was nuts. By Saturday, it got out of control. Like, it was unwatchable. It was a little bit like literally, it reminded me of like a Rose Bowl parade. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it's become.
Yeah, and parts of it are cute. I thought Winslow was cute. That was fun. But there's too many of those. And the Friday night, every old ball player wants to come up and have a little mini pep rally about his pick, and that eats another minute or two each guy. And I'm sitting here as a writer, and it's like every time you eat another minute or two, I'm like going to bed at 3 in the morning and 4 in the morning. But then I do get it. This is not for me. This is for everyone. This is for the world. This is for fans. There are fans waiting to hear that guy. They want to see that old Hall of Famer. They want to see the parrot come. If that's what the NFL wants it, if that's the way fans like it, I'm going to go along with it. I'm going to find a way to make
I guess my point is we've seen a retract. People are not going to the games. The ratings have been down. I've dealt with it here with the knee in a massive way. You're in Philly, dude. You're in like a whole little silver halo. Everything's a Lombardi truck. I understand, but the rest of the league, it hasn't been like. I've been to Jacksonville, and this is that one thing that it feels like people can't get enough of this, right? Like this thing gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Not everything in the NFL is growing the way the draft has grown in the level of interest and craze around it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you know what it is? We're getting used to the idea that fandom is different now. We remember fandom as going to the games and tailgating for the games and watching, like staring at the screen and never blinking. Younger fans are different now. It's about catching up on the highlights, on gifs of the highlights and things like that on social networking, and it's about fantasy and things like that. And it's different. There's a different kind of engagement now. And what's interesting about the draft is that's custom made for that kind of engagement. You get a new player, you get a push notice of it on your phone, you get little highlights of him, you get excited, you think about what your fantasy team's going to do. Hopefully, for the team's sake, you buy a hat and a jersey and stuff like that because you're excited about it. And that's more in keeping with the way a lot of people ingest the NFL now than, say, you and I did years ago when it was all about sitting there diligently watching the fourth quarter, even if it was a 3-touchdown game.
Hey, man, I know you've been working hard. I appreciate you taking some time, especially with all the commitments on the World Championship agenda in your community up there to talk about Joe Flacco and teaching him math. He learned math from you. He knows the math of all this, right?
Oh, he knows all the calculations. He can do the math, absolutely. And I hope all that math knowledge has put a lot of money in the checking and the savings accounts these days.
Take care of yourself, man. I'll keep reading. We'll keep following along. Thanks for the work, man.
Always a pleasure. Take care and enjoy your week, Nestor.
You got it. Mike Tanier, one of our favorites and a rock and roller up there in the swamps of Jersey, in Audubon, New Jersey, once taught Joe Flacco high school math. True story. You can find him out at Bleacher Report at Mike Tanier, Tanier. You can find me in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Reminder, road trips on sale. Nashville as well as Charlotte, ready to go. Throw me an email, nasty@WNST.net. It's all under the Road Trips tab at WNST.net. It's also all over our social media as well. Bus trip to Charlotte, flight to Nashville. We're going to the Jack Daniels distillery in Nashville the day after the game. And it's also my 50th birthday in Nashville on October the 14th. So, I don't know. Come, I'll buy you a drink. I don't know what to say. There's only 50 seats, by the way, too. We're keeping this boutique. It's going to be a small trip. It's my birthday weekend. I don't want to work too much, but we're going to have a good time. We're running a bus trip down to Lynchburg, Tennessee to see the Jack Daniels distillery. So for those of you out there that enjoy the spirit, we'll have some spirit for you there as well. Our Be More Positive community and charity series is off to an awesome start. Had a lot of fun, a lot of feedback, a lot of great stories we're telling around here about a lot of people in need and ways to help. Makes me feel like I'm contributing in some little small way as well. It's all brought to you by Howard Bank as well as our friends at Cole Roofing. You can learn more. Be More Positive is the hashtag, and I've been putting that stuff out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault as well as on our Facebook Live, as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. I am a very available individual. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live anywhere, and sometimes even at a bar at Michael's Cafe watching the Caps play playoff games in Timonium. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.